Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Huge poll came out at the end of last week, done by Electoral Calculus on behalf of the Telegraph with regards to the local elections coming up this May in England. And yeah, stunning poll. Look, the channel since its inception really has focused on the rise of Reform and how well they've done, not for any reason other than Reform have just been doing very, very well in the polling. They've climbed from 14.5% up to the mid to high 20s to even take the lead in some polls. So that's why Reform has been a large focal point for the channel since I started it. And look, this poll continues the theme. You can see on the screen here essentially the results of this MRP poll. And MRP poll, I think it stands for multi-level regression and post-stratification, something along those lines. I don't know what that actually means. I'm not a statistician, I'm not a psephologist, but I think that's what it stands for. Essentially, it's a fairly new form of polling that's come in the last few years. It's successfully or fairly successfully predicted the results of general elections in the UK recently, and I think it's been used to quite good effect elsewhere around the world too. So it's a new, fairly accurate form of polling that's come in. And look, we always said with the local elections this year that the Conservatives were going to do badly because they had a very good 2021 local elections, which is the same councillors are up for election this year, and that's being borne out. And it was all to do with whether Reform would be the big beneficiaries of that. And look, they are predicted to be. You can see the numbers on the screen here. The Conservatives on this polling of over 5,000 people are predicted to drop down from over 1,400 councillors to under 700. Labour, interestingly enough, from a very poor start, looking to lose even more councillors. Now, to be fair, most of these councils are not in areas where Labour would expect to do very well, but given the fact that they just won a general election, you would have thought that they would be, in normal times, they would have been the beneficiary of some of these Conservative losses. Liberal Democrats doing well is also adding about 130 odd seats onto their current tally, and Reform, obviously the big winners from a standing start, obviously weren't about in 2021, 0% of the vote, 0 councillors, right the way up to sharing the 25% of the vote with the Conservatives and gaining just under 700 councillors. The Greens and the others down the bottom there, or Greens and Independents, you can probably see in the bottom paragraph there that Electoral Calculus does say that it's much harder to estimate or predict accurately the Green Party candidates and independent candidates, so they take those numbers with a pinch of salt. But the Greens looking like they'll stay about level, and the independents will lose around about 30 across the country. But obviously the big news story is Reform going from 0 to 700 councillors, which would be a remarkable story. But this won't be the story, because there's a scandal here. In my opinion, there is a scandal here. So this polling was done in all of the councils that are supposed to be up for election this year. So all the councils where elections are going ahead still, and the county councils where the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have conspired amongst themselves to postpone those elections. So these numbers will not be the numbers that we see after the results come in on May the 2nd or May the 3rd, whenever it is, because not that many councillors will be up for election. And I'm going to talk about this a bit more later on in the video, because like I say, I think this is scandalous. I think this is really quite outrageous. And if you live in a local authority where the election has been postponed, I think you should be very angry, even if you are not a Reform voter, because it's Reform and the Liberal Democrats, actually. Reform and the Lib Dems are the two parties that are being to have the largest detriment to them from this awful postponement of elections. Just to get an idea, we got another table down here. So this is showing us, or essentially breaking down, the predicted councillors for each party in both authorities with elections and authorities where the elections have been cancelled for this year. And look, you can see, if you look at the numbers, the scandal comes out, okay? I find it remarkably convenient that the Conservative Party have managed to say in all the authorities where the Reform Party were going to outperform them. So you can see there in the authorities with delay, Reform would have had 223 councillors to the Conservatives 140. So the Reform Party would have outperformed the Conservatives in these authorities. In those authorities, the Conservatives felt that they needed to postpone elections for reasons of devolution, allegedly. And yet, in authorities where the Conservatives will outperform Reform, where the Conservatives will have 548 councillors versus Reform's 474, in those councils, actually, they don't need devolution. They're absolutely fine. Now, that, to me, seems, and call me a cynic, and I tried to keep my opinion out of these videos because it's not what it's about, but this I find, frankly, outrageous. And this is... The Labour Party have enabled this. Angela Rayner, the local government's minister, or as a deputy prime minister, she does this role as well. She conspired to bring about this mechanism where councils could postpone the elections this year. The Conservative councils, where they knew they were going to get absolutely battered, have taken up that offer. And so millions of people are being deprived of a vote this May, and I think that is outrageous. And I will talk about it a bit more later, but that's the scandal there. For now, we're going to jump across to the election map for the councils, and we'll have a look at the councils that are going ahead that are going to change hands. All right, so we'll start with looking at the councils where overall control will change from Tory to Reform. So this is where Reform are predicted to actually take overall control of the council. So starting, it's all in the Midlands really, with one exception. There's 3 councils. Derbyshire, where you can see the Conservatives currently have a pretty large majority there. That's going to be upended, and Reform will, according to the polling of course, Reform will win in Derbyshire. They currently have 2 councillors on there. I assume they must have come in via by-elections in the past few months. Also Leicestershire, just to the southeast of Derbyshire there. Look, Leicestershire's been Conservative controlled since 2001. You can see there from the numbers, 41 councillors to 14 Labour and Lib Dem combined. It's a huge Conservative majority. They're going to get wiped out here in Leicestershire. Reform are going to be the big beneficiaries, it seems, and Reform predicted to take overall control of Leicestershire Council as well. And lastly, a place that we've spoken about quite a lot in, or a council, a county we've spoken quite a lot about being a Reform stronghold building up is Kent, down on the southeast coast. Kent, even more so than Leicestershire. Look at that, just a solid blue control for Conservatives since 1997. 59 Conservative councillors in Kent as it stands. Reform doesn't seem to be on there, but Reform do currently have 1 because they won one Kent County Council by-election before the new year. But as of the last election, this one certainly is. Conservatives have 59 councillors, and everyone else is just the also-rans. Reform set to overturn that. Conservatives again are going to get utterly obliterated here. It seems, with Reform taking overall control of Kent Council. So just those 3, councils where Reform are going to take overall control. You see the momentum that Reform have. If they can maintain that from now until May, who knows? Maybe they can flip even more of these councils from Tory to overall Reform control. There is also one to mention for Labour, which is interesting. So Labour currently control Doncaster Council. This is a city council, I think. Only created in 2017, as you can see there, controlled by Labour since then. Of course, Ed Miliband, Net Zero or Energy Secretary, is an MP for Doncaster North, I think he is. Currently Labour is projected to flip to Reform. So that's interesting, and of course that correlates with what we've seen in the nowcast. We've seen Doncaster flip, one of the Doncaster constituencies flip to Reform. I can't remember if Ed Miliband actually has flipped or if it's very close, they're close behind, but this makes sense. Reform are doing very well in South Yorkshire, in that surrounding area, Doncaster included. So as it stands, we'll see on in May, but as it stands, this polling suggests that Reform will take control of Doncaster Council from the Labour Party. Also, councils where Reform are set to be the largest party. So they won't take overall control, they won't have an outright majority, but they will be the largest party, and so they will steer council business. They include Lancashire, which you can see has sort of oscillated between control over the last 20 or so years. Lancashire is projected to go largest party Reform. Northumberland, right up here at the top of England, has been no overall control for the last over 15, 16 years. That's predicted to go Reform largest party. Currently Conservatives are the largest party there. Also Nottinghamshire and Staffordshire. So Staffordshire is another one we've spoken about quite a lot in terms of the nowcast. A lot of constituencies in Staffordshire sort of going from Labour to Reform or Tory to Reform. And again, look at the huge majority the Conservatives currently have in Staffordshire, with 55 councillors to the just 7 of Labour and Independent combined. The Tories have controlled this since 2009, not anymore. Reform are going to be the largest party. They won't have an outright majority, but they will be the largest party, and a good chunk of those 55 Conservative councillors are going to lose their seats. And in Nottinghamshire, it's only a Conservative minority there. Again, Reform are going to punish the Tories, probably punish Labour too. I reckon. I reckon Labour probably won't come out too healthily out of this election in Nottinghamshire either. And so that's 4 councils that Reform are projected to control in their entirety, and another 4, so 8 in total, where Reform will be the largest party in general. Also, one to mention is Durham. Currently is an independent minority there. The Reform Party are projected to take control of Durham councillors, County Durham Council as well. Now, like I said, there is the other party to mention in these elections that is being, they will be detrimentally affected by the cancellation of the elections. But still, Liberal Democrats are going to punish the Conservatives as well in areas where they are going ahead. In Cornwall, where the Conservatives currently have a minority, the Liberal Democrats will be the largest party in Cornwall, according to this polling. In Gloucestershire, likewise, you can see the Liberal Democrats already did quite well in Gloucestershire last time out when the Conservatives did well. The Liberal Democrats will be the largest party in Gloucestershire. Expect to see that Conservative number drop away quite significantly. And also in Shropshire, where again the Liberal Democrats actually did fairly well here in 2021. The second largest party, they will be the largest party in Shropshire Council. So another 3 councils where elections are going ahead, where the Conservatives are going to lose control of that council. So overall, the councils that are happening then, the Tories are going to lose 9 councils. But without cancellations, they'd lose 15. And this is what I mean about the scandalous decision to postpone these elections. They would be down 15 councils. It would be a wipeout for the Conservatives across English local government. Reform are set to be the largest party in 8 councils, as I mentioned a moment ago. They would have been the largest party in 12 if the cancellations hadn't been implemented. So Tories would have lost 15, and Reform would have gained or been the largest party on 12 of those. Or I suppose 11 of those, because one of them is Labour. And the Liberal Democrats, they will be the largest party in 5 councils, according to this polling, but they would have been the largest party in 8 councils. So again, not to the same extent as Reform, but still, these are elections being cancelled where the Liberal Democrats would have been the largest party, and now they're not. So without the delays then, without the cancellations to these elections, let's just have a look at that. So without delay, Tories would be losing Essex to Reform. Now Essex, look at this. Again, a huge Conservative majority. They've controlled this council for over 20 years, probably even longer, just as far as we can see back here to 1997. It's been Conservative controlled. They've got 51 councillors. Again, everybody else is just an also-ran. Reform would have become the largest party in Essex County Council. Just a huge upset. And we were saying in the last video that I did about how Reform are starting to eat into the Conservatives' parliamentary voting in general election polling in Essex and indeed in East Anglia in general. And to see Essex go from Conservative control for over 20 years to Reform would have been outstanding. Norfolk again, not quite as solidly blue as Essex has been. It's been no overall control a couple of times, but still Conservatives are the party clearly that do the best in Norfolk. That would have gone to Reform as the largest party. And Suffolk again, solidly blue since 2005, 50 councillors for the Conservatives. Everybody else is also around. This one would have gone to Reform majority. Reform would have had overall control of Suffolk County Council, and that is an ice cream van. I don't know if you can hear it. So look, those 3 councils there, Tory strongholds, along with Kent, which is going ahead, would have flipped Tory to Reform. but they've been cancelled, these 3, and I think that's outrageous. Also, one down here in the southeast is Thurrock. This one's Labour controlled. This would have gone to Reform as well. So another one where Reform have been deprived of a council by this decision to cancel elections. Likewise, the Liberal Democrats, as I mentioned, they would have done very well in the south and southeast. East Sussex would have gone Tory to Liberal Democrats, where they would have been the largest party. All of these are just largest party for Lib Dems. They weren't projected to be overall control. But largest party for Lib Dems in East Sussex, where they were doing quite well anyway. Likewise, West Sussex, again, a big Conservative majority in West Sussex would have been overturned, but the elections here have been cancelled. The Liberal Democrats would have been the largest party in West Sussex. And in Surrey, again, another Conservative stronghold. This is Tory heartland, absolutely, since 1997 again, all the way through until today. It's been Conservative controlled. Again, a big Conservative majority would have been wiped out. The Liberal Democrats would have been the largest party in Surrey. So that's all of the councils there we've just quickly gone through. And you can just, if you know, unfortunately I can't change the map, the colours, but you can just, if you can picture in your head how different this map will look in May anyway. There'd be a lot less blue on there, a lot more teal or turquoise for Reform, a little bit more of the Lib Dem yellow, no red. And but then imagine it if these elections hadn't been cancelled in all these various local authorities. The blue would be even less, the teal would be even greater. And look, like I said, I think this is outrageous. In my personal opinion, I try and keep my personal opinion out of these videos because that's not what I want this channel to be about. I want it just to be about polling and following the trending in polling, and I find all that stuff quite exciting, right? But in my opinion, these councils, these authorities where the elections have been postponed or cancelled, those councillors, after the 1st of May or the 2nd of May, whenever the election is, those councillors in those authorities have no democratic mandate after that day. They were elected to a 4-year term in 2021, and it doesn't matter what party they're from, all of them. They were elected to a 4-year term that expires in May of this year. They have no right to be sitting on that council making policy, and they have no right to be collecting taxes from the people of those authorities in the form of council tax. There is a very simple social contract that works in a democratic society and in the UK. The people elect politicians, the politicians tax the people, and the people pay the tax, and then they re-elect or don't elect the councillors. That's how it works. If you are going to overstay your democratic mandate, if you are going to stay in position after your term of elected office has expired, you no longer have the right to levy taxes on the people because you are at this point unelected, in my view. And I think it's outrageous. I really do think it's utterly outrageous, and I don't think that these places should be collecting council taxes until they have an election and the councillors are duly elected. I think it's just a snub to the democratic process, and I don't like it, and I think it stinks. I've covered it in the channel before. If you look at, as we did earlier, the councils where these here it is, yeah, where these elections are being postponed, you cannot help but see they are in the councils where the Conservatives would have done much worse. Now, Labour is in many ways frankly irrelevant because the Labour Party weren't going to do very well in this election anyway. Labour are the ones who have enabled this, like I said, because they are the government. It's Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, who has allowed this to happen. But it's, the Conservatives have put up no defence to this, really. Kemi Badenoch did, I think, pay lip service to it a few weeks ago, saying they should go ahead. If she really meant it, I think she would have written to all the Conservative council leaders and told them that they have to have the elections go ahead. She didn't do that. She paid lip service to it. And look, it's like I say, you can't look past the fact that in the areas where the Reform Party were going to outperform the Conservatives quite substantially, those councils we looked at, Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Thurrock for Labour, those have been cancelled, and yet where the Conservatives will outperform Reform, they've managed to conspire to have those go ahead still. I think it's outrageous. I don't like it. I'm sorry to rant like that because that's not what this channel is about, but I think it's important. This is democracy in this country, and we shouldn't just compromise on it because it's only local government. It's important this stuff happens. I don't like it. I don't think it's a good idea. and I think it's outrageous. And that's my piece on that. Sorry to end it on that sort of note, but look, the highlight of the video is, I suppose, Reform. Despite all that, Reform are doing very, very well. They're going to have a huge night on it in May. If they can push on in the next 8 weeks or so, or 6 weeks I suppose it is now, between now and the election, and increase their vote share even more, they may even have an even more outstanding night in early May. We'll have to wait and see. But as it stands, Reform are genuinely changing the political landscape of this country. They are upending the two-party consensus. And look, let's see where it goes from there. I'll try and get another video out as soon as I can. I just really wanted to make this video because I thought this was a huge poll. So thank you everybody for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.